1, apply properties of real numbers. Alright, so in your notes you should have had some different properties like closure, commutative, associative, identity, inverse, and distributive properties. And we had those for both addition and for multiplication because I probably said it in there, but there's really in math no such thing, in quotes, as subtraction and division. Okay, we are adding an inverse or we are multiplying by an inverse, and that's really what subtraction and division are. So, just be aware of that as we do these things. These problems are going to be a lot of writing. That's going to look like a proof, and it sort of is, but we're just saying like what property allows us to do the step that we're doing, and there's a lot more steps than you probably think there needs to be just because of how we have to go about solving them. So, the first one say to identify the property that the statement illustrates. So, number 12, we've got 15 times 1 equals 15. And we're saying what property it is that we use for that. So, what property is it that when we multiply a number times 1, we get the number itself? Yep. So, we would say the identity, and I abbreviate property of, if you want to actually write out multiplication you can, or if you just want to use like the X for like the multiplication symbol, that's fine too. I'll use them interchangeably. Um, 16. I've got in parentheses 6 times 5, close the parentheses, times 7 is equal to 6 times, in parentheses, 5 times 7. So which property allows me to swap the parentheses around and where they are?
Inverse.
Which one?
I think it's inverse.
Associative.
Yep, associative. Associative property of multiplication. And again, you need to specify which one it is, if it's of multiplication or addition, because they are different. Alright, so those ones are just kind of like, just state what the property is. The next ones, what they're going to do is they're going to give us a, like, problem, okay, where the left and the right they're equal to each other, but they're not the same thing, and so we have to get the left to look like the right by following the properties. And this is where, like I said, there's going to be a lot more steps than you probably feel there needs to be, but we're walking through each and every step of why I'm allowed to do what I can do in that particular problem. It's really going to be like a throwback to proofs. I'm sorry, it's the one time this year we do that. 18, we've got 15 times, in parentheses, 3 divided by b is equal to 45 divided by b. Alright, so we're going to leave the right side alone. We're only going to work with the left side. So like I said earlier, we don't really have division. When I got to college and my professor was like, division doesn't exist, I was like, I'm a math major and I've done math my whole life, and now you're telling me that it was all a lie? Like, anyways, and then he's like, well, you're multiplying by the inverse, and I'm like, okay, doesn't really matter, but it does matter for these kinds of problems. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to get rid of the division. If I have a problem with a subtraction sign in it, I need to get rid of that. So the first thing I'm going to do is rewrite the division as a multiplication of 1 over b, okay, because that would be like the same thing. So I've got, this is going to become 15 times, in parentheses, 3 times 1 over b. And the reason for that is going to be the definition of division. Because division is literally just multiplying by the inverse. And the temptation right off the bat is just to go, oh, well, with the parentheses, I can just do 15 times 3 and I get 45 and I'm done. Like, yes, as far as the quick math goes, that is what we would do. But as writing out the steps of why we're allowed to do it, we can't do it that way. So, the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to take and I'm going to move the parentheses from being around 3 times 1 over b over to being the 15 times 3. What property allows me to do that?
Associative.
Yep. So I can move it over here, and that would be the associative property of multiplication. Now, PEMDAS allows me or tells me to do what's in parentheses first, okay? That's what was causing the problem up here technically. So now I can do 15 times 3, which is 45, times 1 over b. I can do that by the definition of multiplication, or we can just say multiplication because ultimately all I did was multiply. And then now, I ultimately want it to look like this, 45 divided by b. I can change this now to be 45 divided by b by the definition of division. So 4 steps to do something that we absolutely could have done in 1. Okay, now there are times, this morning when we were doing it in the other class, they had a few times where they were like, are there multiple ways that like we could do a problem, because like the way they did it wasn't necessarily exactly matched up in the back of the book with the answer. And my answer is yes, there sometimes are, but there are certain things that have to be done in a certain order, right? Like I couldn't go ahead and multiply 15 times 3 here. Right, I had to change this to 1 over b so that I could then use the associative property and regroup things. So I told them, and I'm telling you the same thing, if you get to 1 and you've done it a certain way and you look in the back and you're like, well, I swapped these 2 steps, or my steps look a little different, or my phrasing's a little different, like in the next problem, we'll see kind of like a couple steps where like I would maybe call it one thing or the other. You can always come ask and I'll look, and kind of like as far as grading goes for these types of problems, it's kind of like 1 point if you do the step right, 1 point if you get the thing right, but like on the quiz, this is probably a 5-point question and there were really 4 steps. So I'm a little bit more lenient in how I grade this, but there are steps that have to be there. If you've done every single one that's in here, and there are 6 of them, you should be fine. That's what I would tell you. And we're going to do 3 of them. So if you do the other 3, you'll be A-okay. All right, the next one, I'm going to go a little bit out of order here just because I want us to see something before I do a different one. So I'm going to jump to 22. This problem is in parentheses 12b plus 15, and then minus 3b outside the parentheses is equal to 15 plus 9b. So again, there's a temptation here to just like, oh, I'm just going to swap 15 and negative 3b, and I'm just going to call it a day. Well, we can't, or I'm going to say, let me rephrase, minus 3b, and we're going to do that. Well, we can't. We have to follow the steps down in order to do our order of operations, okay? Subtraction doesn't exist in math, so I need to add the inverse. So that's going to be my first step, is to rewrite this as in parentheses 12b plus 15, and then plus a parentheses negative 3b. And so that's going to be my first step. And that's going to just be, just like we had definition of division up here, this is going to be the definition of subtraction. And a lot of times I just put the little subtraction symbol there. Now, ultimately, I want the b terms to be on the right because it's going to be 15 plus 9b at the end. So I need to get the b terms over here. Well, a lot of times people are like, oh, well, I'll just go ahead and like regroup this as 12b and negative 3b and call it a day. Well, we can't do that yet. I have to swap the terms inside of here first. So this is going to become 15 plus 12b plus negative 3b. What allows me to swap something within a parentheses? We haven't used this one yet.
Is it associative multiplication?
So associative is totally moving the parentheses, but if we're just swapping two numbers within a parentheses, it's a different one.
Is it inverse?
Starts with a C.
Commutative?
Yep. The commutative property of addition. All right, now I can regroup this. Okay, realistically, this is just a term by itself because we're plus a negative. That's why it's in parentheses. But I'm going to regroup this and take this parentheses and move it over here. So I'm going to end up with 15 plus parentheses 12b plus negative 3b in parentheses. What allows me to swap those? It's the one you tried to tell me in the last step. To totally move a parentheses around, which one is it?
Associative.
Yep, associative property. Now, at this point, I can go ahead within this parentheses and add these things together here. So I get 15 plus 9b. Now, this is one of the reasons where there's a couple different ways we could write it. We could simply write addition, or we could write combined like terms. A lot of times if there's a variable involved, we're going to write combined like terms. But if you just wrote addition, I would take that as well. Okay, so I'm going to write combined like terms, but the book may call it something else. They may call it addition. If you're ever not sure, just ask. Questions on that one? So again, 4 steps to do something that we absolutely could have done in one. And I know it's annoying. That's why I said it's my least favorite section. It's not the hardest thing we do all year, but it's up there for the most annoying for sure. All right, I'm going to backtrack now. I wanted us to see stuff about this one before I move to the next one. Number 19. In parentheses, C minus 3, outside the parentheses, plus 3 equals C. Looking at this problem, you're probably like, well, duh. Like, I know that's going to be C, like, but again, we've got to work through the steps. So what do we think the first thing I'm going to have to do here is?
Change that negative 3.
Yep. I'm going to change this to plus a negative. So in here I've got C plus negative 3 and then plus 3. And why do I have to do that?
Because that's what you instructed.
What's the reason? We used it in the last one.
Definition of subtraction, addition, something like that.
Yep, definition of subtraction. It's just adding an inverse. Now, I'm going to regroup this because I need the negative 3 and the positive 3 together in a parentheses. So I'm going to move this around and have C plus in parentheses, negative 3 plus 3. What allows me to do that? Yep.
Yeah.
Associative property of addition. Now, people often go from here to saying that it's just equal to C. There's another step in between here. We've got to say C plus 0, because negative 3 plus 3 is 0. And that is the inverse property, okay, saying things that are opposite are equal to 0, so it's the inverse property of addition. And then finally, I can say that C plus 0 is equal to C by the identity property of addition. Okay, so for multiplication, it would be multiplying by 1. For addition, it's adding 0 for our identity. Questions on those? All right, now we're going to get into something a little bit more practical, a little easier to deal with. Conversions. Solve the problem, use unit analysis to check your work. So we're just going to make sure that our units are right. It's going to look a lot like science class.
Sorry to interrupt. Leah and I are going to Starbucks.
I need a message from your mom.
All right.
I have hers already, though, so she's good. It can just be a text.
Okay.
Or your
I'll
dad,
send you
whoever.
a screenshot or whatever, or I'll show it to you.
Okay.
'Cause I don't have my phone.
When I'm done, I can send her a message.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. 28. You buy 6 gallons of juice. Couldn't tell you why. I don't know who needs that much juice at a time. At $1.25 per gallon. What is your total cost? Yep, so I'm going to use a T chart, which is a conversion chart. You probably have seen these in science before, hopefully. If not, if you're taking chemistry, you'll probably see it in there. That's where they come into play a lot, but I like to demonstrate them in here. So I have 6 gallons of juice, and I'm paying $1.25 per gallon. I'm looking for total cost. That means my amount of money needs to be on top of the equation. So it is going to be the $1.25 is going to be up here. And then it's per 1 gallon. So I'm going to put 1 gallon down here. So this allows me to do my unit analysis at the same time as I'm doing the math part. Okay? Because it's asking you to do both. So gallons cancel. So I'm left with just money. Anything on the top we multiply, anything on the bottom we divide. So in this case we have 6 times $1.25, technically divided by 1. Obviously we don't have to do that. So 6 times $1.25 would be what?
No, more than that.
Less than that.
Hmm?
Less than that.
775. 750.
Yep, $7.50.
Okay.
So $7.50. And you can use your calculator on these little things. Well, in my brain I went, okay, 6 times $1 is $6.
Yeah,
6 quarters is $1.50, so $7.50. So, anyways. I don't let you have a calculator on the test or the quiz, so you will need to refresh on how to multiply and divide.
Yeah.
We don't really use a calculator till chapter 3.
Oh no.
All right, 30. You ride in a train for 175 miles at an average speed of 50 miles per hour. I'm just going to write MPH. I trust that most of you are either driving or close to driving and have seen a road sign before and know what that means. How many hours does the trip take? All right, so again, we got to do our unit analysis. I'm going to start with the 175 miles up here on top. And I'm traveling at a speed of 50 miles per hour. Okay, so that's 50 miles per 1 hour. The temptation a lot is to put the 50 on top, but that's where the beauty of this chart comes into play. It helps us out with that. So we put the 50 on the bottom so that we have our units down here, 50 miles. Miles will cancel, and then in 1 hour. So that rate can be flipped. It's a fraction, so it can go either way. It's just at our convenience, okay, of which one do we need. So we're just doing it on the bottom instead. We still have 50 miles per hour, just backwards. So now, miles cancel, and I have 175 divided by 50. Anybody know what that is?
3 hours, 20 minutes.
30 is 3.5.
You can either write 3.5 hours, or you can write 3 hours and 30 minutes. I don't know why I just wrote it like that. Go away. 3 hours and 30 minutes. Either way is fine. But we have that extra 25 over 50 to give us the 1/2 of the hour there. Questions on those before we move to the next thing? All right, a couple conversions I just want to make sure that we are aware of. How many feet are in a mile?
Feet are in a
Isn't
mile.
it 5,000?
I haven't done that since like
5,280.
Yep, so you might want to write some of these down because you're going to need them to do some of these problems. 5,280 feet in a mile. How many minutes are in an hour?
60.
How many seconds are in a minute?
60.
How many seconds are in an hour?
Wait, seconds are in an hour?
A lot.
3, 6. No, more than that.
Well, you're on the right track.
600.
Yep, 3,600. I like people to know that. It makes your conversions easier. Thanks. I'll bring the money at some point soon when I remember my checkbook.
Don't worry.
I got distracted. How many ounces are in a pound?
16.
How many pounds are in a ton?
2,000.
How many quarts are in a gallon?
4.
How many cups are in a pint?
8. Or no. That's
Two?
pints.
2.
Which one?
Um,
Which one's 8? Is it pints to quart?
Well, there's 2 cups in a pint, 2 pints in a quart. So that means there's
That's pint to gallon.
Okay.
8.
well, there's 4 quarts in a gallon. There's 4 cups in a quart, so there's 16 cups in a gallon.
I think we could learn all this if we all just went back to 5th grade. That's all we did in math.
I did a lot of this summer while making pickles. So I had a recipe that was like, you need 2 gallons of this, or no, 2 quarts of this. And I'm like, okay, well, I have a gallon, so I need half the gallon. Okay, well, I'm going to have to measure this out. Well, I don't have a quart measure, so I'm going to have to use my 2-cup measuring cups. So then I was like calculating that. And then it was like, all right, well, your sugar, you need 4.5 pounds of sugar. And I'm like, could you give it to me in cups? So then the next time I was like, well, I'm going to measure out as I measure the weight. I'm going to see how many cups it is. So I got it all set the first time. And then the second time I went to do it, it wasn't the same. I was like, so the weight of it changes. Got it. It's like, so I just need to do it in weight. Anyways, that was my chaos of making pickles this summer.
Did the pickles still come out good? Okay, good.
They were my grandmother's pickles, so we haven't had them. She passed away in 2017, so we haven't had them in at least 10 years because she didn't make them like that year. So, and I'm not really sure that she made them the year before that. So it's probably been at least, 10 to 15 years since we had them. So it was very nostalgic. But it was fun. But I was like, I don't have anybody to ask for help on this recipe anymore. So I was like, gotta wing it and hope for the best. So, All right, well, you're going to use some of those conversions. There's some other ones like grams to kilograms, things like that. But I'm primarily keeping us in our normal units that we use. I don't even know that. I think it's like 2.5, but I'm not
I
positive.
thought it was 3.
I don't know.
Yeah, it might be
Really, now I gotta go
totally-
home and
I think it's.
It's what?
I know.
I do.
I have like a little conversion chart for those kinds of things, but. All right, 34, 5 hours to minutes. So basically, I want to know how many minutes are in 5 hours, essentially. So again, I'm going to set up my little chart here. So we already said there are 60 minutes in an hour, so the hours have to go on the bottom. So 60 minutes is on top. We multiply across the top. So 5 times 60.
$300.
300
Oh, you were asking. I'm sorry.
minutes. I know, I was like, anybody? I was like, 5 times 6, add a 0. 300 minutes. All right. A slightly more complicated one. They're giving us a rate in some type of units, and then they want us to convert it to a rate in another type of unit. So that means that we're changing two things. Okay? So with this one, 42, they give us 6 feet per second, and they want us to convert it to miles per hour. All right, so I'm going to start setting up this. Anytime they give me a rate, I'm going to stack it top and bottom just like a fraction. So I've got 6 feet in 1 second. And I'm converting both things, right? Sometimes it might say just convert it to miles per second, which obviously is not very realistic, but they might just have us convert, or they might say to do feet per minute instead of feet per second. Okay, so sometimes I'll only have you change one thing. Sometimes it's both. In this case, it's both. So let's do the feet to miles first. So our conversion from feet to miles, we already talked about it, is 5,280 feet. I need them to be opposite, so I know it has to go on the bottom in 1 mile. And that leaves me with miles on top because that's what I wanted. So feet can cross out. Then I'm at miles. So now I've got to do something about seconds to hours. So if you forgot that it was 3,600 seconds in an hour, we can either use that if you know that. If you forget, we can do it the long way. So I'll just show it the long way. So if I needed to go seconds to minutes, then minutes to hours, I would say, well, there's 60 seconds in 1 minute. So my seconds are going to cancel. I'm in minutes, but I got to get to hours. So that means I got to do it again. So then I can say, well, there's 60 minutes in 1 hour. Minutes are going to cancel. My units, I'm left with hours on the bottom. So as a quick unit analysis, I have miles on top, hours on bottom. So I know that's good. Now I just need to multiply. So the way we would do that is we would take and we would multiply 6 times 60 times 60, and we would figure out what that is. And then we would divide it by the bottom, which in this case everything was a 1 except for this 5,280. And we would get that. For the sake of time, so you'll have time to do problems, I'll just tell you this is 4.1 miles per hour, or you can write MPH if you're so inclined. Any questions on those? All right, problems 13, 17, 21, 27, 35, 37, and 41. You have about 15 minutes. You'll probably be close to finishing. I don't know that you'll quite finish them, but you'll probably be close. But these are due tomorrow at the beginning of class. Your box is the very bottom one over there. And you need to watch 1.2 notes for tomorrow.